he would also suffer a cataclysmic breakdown, culminating in an act of bloody self-mutilation.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 normal-looking paintings with disturbing backstories.
Kahlo's life was marked by significant physical suffering.
For this list, we'll be looking at paintings you may or may not be familiar with that have darker origins and meanings than you might think. What is your favorite painting? Does it have an interesting backstory? Let us know in the comments. Number 10. The Fairy Feller's Masterstroke, Richard Dadd. Artists and mental health issues seem to go hand in hand quite often. Richard Dadd was known for his meticulously detailed, fantastical style. However, his personal life was wrought with psychological woes. In 1843, upon returning from a trip on which he had had a mental breakdown, Dadd slowly became convinced that his father was the devil and ended up murdering him. He was then caught and institutionalized.
He was placed in the Royal Bethlehem Hospital, better known as Bethlehem Hospital, and colloquially known as Bedlam.
He continued to paint despite this, and was in the process of painting the Fairy Feller's Masterstroke for a hospital official when he was transferred.
He felt motivated to make these extraordinary works into which, one can't help feeling, he imaginatively displaced himself as a kind of escape from the conditions in which he was held.
It is thus unfinished. Upon closer inspection, the inner turmoils of Dadd can perhaps be detected in some of the finer details.
The main figure is the fella himself, who looks a little bit perhaps like Richard Dadd, raising an axe.
Number 9. The Ambassadors, Hans Holbein the Younger. The Ambassadors is an interesting piece and has been subject to much speculation throughout the centuries since it was painted.
This is one of the most popular paintings in the National Gallery. So it's extraordinary to think that when it first came here in 1890, people understood so little about it.
It depicts two friends, Jean de Danteville and Georges de Salve, both French diplomats. The two were on an assignment to reconcile Henry VIII with the church when the portrait was commissioned. Though the image initially appears to simply show two friends, the symbols within tell a different story. The instruments and items behind the pair represent both sides of the reconciliatory argument, where the lute with a broken string represents a rift or discord between them. The lower-centered distorted image, or anamorphosis, viewed from the correct angle, shows a human skull. Perhaps a reminder that mortality conquers all in the end.
One of the ways that the skull would come back into the correct perspective is by using a small cylindrical piece of glass. If you hold that in front of the picture, then the image of the skull appears correctly in it.
Number 8. Self-Portrait with Monkey, Frida Kahlo. Frida Kahlo's works appear as bright, vivid self-portraits heavily influenced by the Mexicanidad movement, a Mexican cultural revival following the revolution. There is, however, a deeper symbolism to Kahlo's works.
A self-taught artist, Kahlo created imagery that primarily focused on personal stories, on love, and its connection to pain in her life.
Though we could look at any number of her pieces, let's focus on her self-portraits with monkeys, of which she painted 8. Kahlo had a number of pet monkeys at her home in Coyoacan. She herself admitted that the monkeys replaced the children she could not have.
Kahlo was drawn to monkeys for their symbolism and their playful, childlike nature.
Kahlo's serious injuries following a bus accident in 1925 had rendered her infertile.
As a result of the accident, Kahlo was in and out of hospitals throughout her life and subjected to numerous painful surgeries.
Kahlo was also interested in Aztec history, and monkeys were recognized in Aztec beliefs as fertility symbols. All this makes us look a little differently at these portraits, really bringing a certain sadness to them. Number 7. The Lovers 2, René Magritte. Though Magritte himself denied any correlation between his use of shrouded faces and a traumatic childhood experience, we can't deny the probable influence. When Magritte was 14, his mother took her own life by drowning.
This was not the first time she had tried to end her own life. She had attempted it many times, often resulting in her husband Leopold locking her in a bedroom for long periods.
Young Magritte witnessed her body being taken out of the water with her nightgown shrouding her face. The artist produced a number of paintings featuring shrouded or obscured faces, leading us to believe the image was firmly planted in his mind. In this example, The Lovers, a couple is depicted sharing a kiss while their faces are obscured behind white sheets. The symbolism is open to interpretation, as Magritte did not reveal the motivations behind his works, wanting to leave them subjective.
René Magritte described his paintings as visual images which conceal nothing. They evoke mystery, and indeed, when one sees one of my pictures, one asks oneself this simple question: what does that mean?
The Love is Blind theme is frequently recognized here. Number 6. Portrait with Bandaged Ear, Vincent van Gogh. Van Gogh was plagued with mental health issues throughout his life, and this self-portrait represents one of his most infamous fits.
A cataclysmic breakdown, culminating in an act of bloody self-mutilation.
When he was roommates with fellow painter Paul Gauguin, the two got into an argument, and Van Gogh had a mental seizure and threatened his fellow artist with a razor. Unfortunately, he only injured himself with said razor, slicing off a piece of his own left ear, which he then presented as a gift to a local lady of the night.
She fainted at the sight of it, while Vincent disappeared into the night and then returned home.
He claimed to have no recollection of the episode. Van Gogh painted many self-portraits, but the couple featuring the bandaged ear on the right side in paintings due to using a mirror while painting symbolizes the darker psychological side of a troubled man, whether intentional or not. Number 5. Black Triptychs, Francis Bacon. Francis Bacon was, like some aforementioned artists, careful not to adhere meaning or stories to any of his works.
With the record of the image comes the mood, because you can't make an image without it creating a mood. A person or a thing, either a portrait or a figure.
He did, however, admit to narrative in his Black Triptychs, particularly Triptych August 1972 and Triptych May to June 1973. Bacon had a romantic relationship with George Dyer, a man of unfortunate upbringing.
They became inseparable. Dyer was not sophisticated, but went to every single exhibition that Bacon had, would travel regularly to Paris.
Dyer became his artistic model and lover in the 1960s, though the relationship was ill-fated, mostly due to Dyer's alcoholism. Dyer took his own life in an adjacent connected hotel room in 1971, while Bacon was at the opening of his art retrospective. The Black Triptychs depict the way in which Dyer was found, one from the perspective of Dyer's room, one from Bacon's side. The paintings are admittedly a catharsis for Bacon's emotional grief. Number 4. Two Tahitian Women, Paul Gauguin.
Paul Gauguin's life was the stuff of romantic fiction.
Sometimes the darker parts of artist biographies are glossed over in favor of artistic praise. Paul Gauguin produced a large number of paintings during his time in Tahiti that featured bright colors, stunning vivid landscapes, alluring locals, and what the artist called a primitive paradise.
Tahiti had long taken root as an earthly paradise in the European imagination.
However, the women depicted in the paintings were not always simply Gauguin's muses, they were also his mistresses. In his time in Tahiti, Gauguin infected a large female population with syphilis. He named his home the House of Pleasure, took strolls with an erect penis-handled walking stick, had a second-floor room plastered with lewd photographs, and so on. This makes us look at the women in paintings such as Two Tahitian Women a little differently. Number 3. Judith slaying Holofernes, Artemisia Gentileschi. Artemisia Gentileschi was an Italian Baroque painter and a highly talented artist influenced primarily by Caravaggio.
The 17th century art world simply wasn't ready for her. Not only was she a woman, but she was one who favored gory biblical scenes over demure portraits and still lives.
The majority of her works feature images from myth and religion. Judith slaying Holofernes depicts the biblical story of Judith, who infiltrated the Assyrian army during the war with Palestine in order to take the life of General Holofernes.
The story is usually interpreted that she seduces the general, but he gets drunk and falls asleep, and then she takes his sword and beheads him. And that's the moment that we're seeing here.
The painting is often seen as a sort of self-portrait, as Artemisia was sexually assaulted by family friend and painter Agostino Tassi, after which she threatened him with a knife for taking her honor. A closer look at the painting reveals that Judith wears a bracelet featuring the goddess Artemis, who guarded her virginity diligently and violently retaliated against anyone who threatened it.
And it looks to me like she's rolled up her sleeves in order to do this. The naturalism is so palpable here. And of course, that is the heart of Baroque art.
Number 2. The Ghent Altarpiece, Hubert and Jan van Eyck.
Throughout 6 centuries, the Ghent altarpiece has been burned, forged, and raided in 3 different wars. It is, in fact, the world's most stolen artwork.
The Ghent altarpiece was commissioned by Ghent, Belgium's Mayor Jodocus Veit and his wife Lisbeth in the 1420s, and completed by 1432. It is a 12-piece installment depicting religious figures, scenes, and symbols.
It's one of the most influential artworks ever made. When Jan van Eyck completed it in Ghent in 1432, it was immediately deemed the best painting in Europe.
The piece has a volatile history. In the 16th century, the Great Iconoclasm, or Bildensturm, a movement to destroy religious iconography, would have seen the destruction of the altarpiece had it not been for rabid clergymen hiding it. In 1781, Roman Emperor Joseph II viewed the piece and declared the nudity of Adam and Eve to be offensive, causing those panels to be removed. It was also historically dismantled and separated, cut in half, narrowly survived a fire, was bricked into a wall, stolen, nearly blown up. It is currently in restoration.
It's a miracle that it still exists, but otherwise you only see texts on what has happened with it.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into Settings and switch on your notifications. Number 1. The Charnel House, Pablo Picasso. In 1937, Picasso painted Guernica, a depiction of the bombing aftermath of a small village during the Spanish Civil War. It's an aggressive vision of chaos and a poignant anti-war statement.
The style offers a profoundly overwhelming view of violence, destruction, and casualties. Multiple perspectives only compound the horror on display.
Around 1944, the artist painted something of a sequel to Guernica in Charnel House. Picasso was said to be apolitical and that he did not concern himself with political affairs. However, the Civil War changed that, and his reaction is clear in the 2 pieces. Charnel House depicts a Republican family who was murdered in their house during World War II, turning, according to Picasso, their family home into a charnel house, meaning a storage vault for bodies. Though the piece may initially not look striking, proper observation reveals the grotesque nature of the subject matter within.
Picasso's work remains a searing reminder of the true casualties of violence.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.